Welcome to the Attention Deficit Disorder Expert Podcast Series by Attitude Magazine.
I'm pleased to welcome you to today's ADHD Experts presentation titled The 2E Playbook for Nurturing Gifted Students with ADHD. Twice exceptional, or 2E students, are incredibly gifted, but often struggle with one or more learning disabilities or developmental challenges. The potential of 2E students is often overshadowed by the unique challenges they face. For example, teachers may believe a student is being lazy in one subject because they excel in another, or 2E kids might use their strengths to mask their learning problems, or their special needs might overshadow their giftedness. For children to reach their academic potential, it is vital that their learning disabilities be identified, addressed, and supported in school. In today's webinar, we'll learn how parents and teachers can best support a 2E student both in and out of the classroom. We'll talk about identifying strengths and weaknesses and advocating as a parent and as a 2E student. You'll hear how to ensure future pathways to college and careers, and about a personal journey told by our expert speakers. Leading today's presentation is Dr. Lisa Dieker and her 2E son, Josh Dieker. Dr. Lisa Dieker is a Pegasus professor and Lockheed Martin eminent scholar in the College of Community Innovation and Education at the University of Central Florida. Her research focuses on harnessing the power of teachers to work across disciplines in inclusive settings in teacher education, special education, and simulation. She is working on creating artificial intelligence agents to support students with disabilities. She holds 3 patents in simulation and education. Josh Dieker is beginning a new position in a management role for Trek Bikes in Leesburg, Virginia. He received a bachelor's degree in recreation and management from Springfield College in 2018. Josh also competed as a gymnast and was a 4-time NCAA qualifier, collegiate All-American, and academic All-American athlete. He is diagnosed with Tourette syndrome, dyslexia, and dysgraphia. He just completed a term serving as an ambassador for the Tourette Syndrome Association. Before I hand over the microphone to Lisa and Josh, I have just a few housekeeping items. Those of you tuned in to the live webinar may submit questions for the experts at any time by navigating to the text box under the video player. To download the slides, click on the Event Resources section of your webinar screen. And if you're interested in the Certificate of Attendance option, look for instructions in the email you'll receive about an hour after the live broadcast. If you're listening in replay or podcast mode, visit attitudemag.com and search podcast 423 to access the slides, the webinar replay, and the certificate of attendance option. If you support the work we're doing here at Attitude to strengthen the ADHD community, we encourage you to visit attitudemag.com/subscribe and sign up for Attitude Magazine. The latest fall issue features our Success at School special section. We highlight advice from experts to help your child thrive in this school year. The fall issue also includes articles with expert guidance on what to do when schools resist LD evaluations and support, and how to conquer social anxiety, how to bully-proof your kids, and so much more. In the upcoming winter issue, teachers will appreciate our pullout, 5 ways to improve classroom behavior. Sign up for Attitude Magazine for your family or to share with a teacher or a loved one who could benefit from greater ADHD understanding. Finally, the sponsor of this webinar is Brain Balance. Brain Balance is an integrative cognitive development program designed to help kids, teens, and adults with ADHD, learning differences, anxiety, and beyond improve focus, attention, and behavior. Brain Balance creates a customized plan based on your child's needs to support their social, emotional, and academic growth. An exploratory study with Harvard's McLean Hospital found the Brain Balance program to be as effective as low-dose stimulant medication in alleviating ADHD symptoms in children. Click the link on screen to visit brainbalance.com to learn about Brain Balance today. Attitude thanks our sponsors for supporting our webinars. Sponsorship has no influence on speaker selection or webinar content. So without further ado, I'm so pleased to welcome Dr. Lisa Dieker and her son, Josh Dieker. Thank you so much for joining us today and leading this discussion.
Thank you, Carol. And we're really excited to be here with you today. And as she said, my name is Lisa, and we're really excited to share our collective journey. And I'm always excited, Josh, to have the privilege to present with you.
Yeah, thanks for having us. My name is Josh Dieker, and thanks for the introduction and presenting here with my mother.
So we're going to start with giving you a little sample of Josh's writing, and just so you get a sense of how hard things were. This was a writing sample in second grade. And Josh, do you remember where I got this sample from, why I still own it today?
Yeah, it was under my pillow for the tooth fairy. That was a long time ago.
And so one of the things that Josh did really well is he had a great heart, but he had meltdowns, sensory issues. And when he was in second grade, every teacher he had, his grandmother, who, loves kids unconditionally, kept saying something isn't right. And yet here's the heart. So always, as we're talking to parents or educators, we always say, what is the kid's strength? And here's what he wrote. He said, "Dear Tooth Fairy, here's some money for poor people, and get them a Yu-Gi-Oh or a Pokemon or a Rolly deck. One that you leave under the bed in a bag. Love, Joshua, nickname Squishy." And honestly, as a mother, that was a moment when I realized, all right, this kid may struggle with the handwriting, but his ability to understand how to give back to society and make a difference is something I really value and I need to celebrate. So by third grade, Josh had been diagnosed with Tourette syndrome. A lot of people suspected ADHD, to be very honest. I always say to find a kid with Tourette's, you have to take a lot of data. But the Tourette's wasn't what got in the way the most for Josh. It was really the handwriting and the reading were the greater struggles for lots of reasons. And so what do you do when you're a professor in special ed and your kid's diagnosed with a disability? I'm like, "Hey, Josh, would you like to keynote with me and tell everybody what's Tourette's?" He's like, "Sure, you tell me what it is and I'll tell them what it is." And so one of our first messages when you have a child or a young adult with 2E, to make sure you celebrate their strengths, but help them understand how to talk about their challenges. Because as Carol said in the intro, oftentimes they're lazy, they're not motivated. It wasn't about motivation. It was just really, really hard. And speaking of hard, I can't see a raise of hands, but if you're a middle school parent, it was ugly. I just will tell you, I love Josh unconditionally, but in middle school, that was a tough love. He didn't like himself. He was a male gymnast. We had a suicide contract. We had to threaten to call the police on him. So this great kid that I gave birth to became this middle school thing that I really struggled with. And it was, now you feel good about yourself and now you don't like yourself. And it was a real struggle. And so we don't have a lot of images during the time of puberty and development and frontal cortex development of Josh smiling. But our favorite picture is his senior year. There's a smile. Josh, you want to share what happened?
Yeah, so this was a super exciting moment. I was at U.S. or the Nationals in 2014 for the Junior Olympics. And at this time, this was me pretty much winning, or around that time, when I won my third place on the rings. It was a super exciting moment just because it was a good tie up to the end of the season and kind of like going into college, gymnastics career.
And what's interesting is as you see that image of the smile and the salute, we, talk about Josh really trying to do things on his own because he was barely getting a high school diploma. So here's this kid that has these gifts, and yet we struggled with how do we get him through school? And we found so many advocates and so many friends, but it was really, really hard. And in this image, it's a video. We're not going to show it, but our favorite part here is he does a very hard skill for the first time called a double-double, where he's doing 360 this way and 360 this way simultaneously, but he sticks his landing. And when he does it, it's like, yeah. And what I love is the thought that every kid with any disability should always be able to do something on their own. I believe kids with disabilities should be givers, not takers. and they should leave it all on the floor every time, no matter what they're doing, whether they're reading, they're writing, no matter their struggle. And I think, Josh, that's something you did really well and gymnastics taught you. Would you agree?
Yeah, most definitely.
So one of the things in our house we tried to do, and I will tell you, honestly, I locked him out on the back porch one winter because he wouldn't do his homework. We could tell you all kinds of true stories that weren't ugly, but here today, we want to really talk about what went well and what we did. And so we tried to make every day a celebration. Some days were harder than another. This is my moment of embarrassing Josh. The day he was born was a celebration to everything Josh tried to do. Downhill skiing, archery, riding a bike, snowboarding, everything he attempted physically was so easy. Like he'd get mad if he couldn't do it the first time. And yet, do you want to talk about school?
Yeah. I mean, just looking at, these pictures here, I'm always the one getting held, always kind of had like a pretty neutral face compared to those pictures prior of me just having this amazing smile. I loved what I was doing physically. School just was a little bit different, a little bit more of a challenge for me. And you can kind of see this, it shows itself in these pictures here. And then,
why are you smiling here?
Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, this is an awesome reward I got when I was, younger as well. And this was me getting a prize for losing the most teeth.
And so one of the things we always say is if you're a teacher out there or a parent, you might really struggle. What can I celebrate today? This is what we loved. He had amazing teachers that one of them came up and he said, I got a prize. And I was like, what for? Because we had a journal filled with not sitting still, not doing his work, not getting started. And his teacher was great. We knew it was him, but we didn't know how to help him. So those simple celebrations are really big. And here's the first image that I really have captured in photo that shows his eyes bugging. And so one of the struggles for Josh is that people kept saying he can't pay attention. I'm like, well, but he can, but he can't. And what we learned is he really had a very, very bad tick of his eyeballs and of his nose. And so when he would do this all the time, it was really hard to read. He was gifted ambidextrous because we had lots of testing. So writing with a pencil was hard. We found keyboarding very early on to be a good friend to Josh. Wouldn't you agree when you started a keyboard, life was a lot better?
Yeah, definitely. Technology has been useful.
And yet one of the things is we got the same report cards. And remember, I'm a professor in special education, and I would have the best holiday gifts, and I would do everything to try to help those teachers. And yet always, these are the kinds of notes we saw, not because teachers were bad, they were being honest and trying to help us. Now, I'm not sure I agree with this last one. He's often hitting or annoying. Well, I would say that was true in middle school, maybe not as much in elementary school. But I noticed the statement here, he's unaware of his antics until after the fact. Well, a lot of times when you have Tourette's or other challenges, you don't even know what you don't know because it's just part of your neurological pathway. And so he knew what he was doing in his strength, but his challenges were constantly being challenged. And then the beginning, this is the very first gymnastics class, and just a quick laugh for you. The instructor called me to the stage and said, I need to talk with you. And I was like, Josh Dieker, what did you do now? And I hate to say that, but as a parent, my husband and I both were like, how do we help this kid? But we had no diagnosis yet. And I think that's important. If you're struggling before your kid's diagnosed, keep taking data, keep looking at what's going on. And she said, I need him out of this class. I was like, what did he do? She said, look, he's doing a cartwheel on the balance beam and he's 3. He needs to go to a boys' gym. And the journey began. You want to talk about that journey for a minute and maybe the struggle between the two, Josh?
Yeah. I mean, it was a very successful career, as you guys saw, prior, the pic slides beforehand with me, going to junior nationals and things like that. But school was definitely a challenge. And, I had an outlet going right after school to gymnastics and practice, things like that. And, having that physical attitude or that physical stuff going on. So having those two strengths and weaknesses, finishing the day with a strength was always a huge positive for me.
And you want to share your writing sample here? Has it gotten better?
Yeah, well, I mean, it's probably still the same. It's definitely not much better. I mean, like you said before, a keyboard was a huge success for me later on.
Yeah, in case you're wondering, her hair was scary and her bones were creaky, in case you wondered. And so what's funny too, if you have a child that struggles as a writer, you can always read their writing, but you can only imagine for them the frustration. Again, text to speech. We're a big believer in what tool can minimize that area of deficit so that I can really use my strengths. We jumped to spelling words on a tablecloth. We found anything physical we could do to help him. Yet you'll see his report cards weren't stellar. And he gave permission to share these with the whole world. And he's like, yeah, because that's who I am. Grades were hard. The other was easy. And we tried just about everything. So again, we want to share with you as parents, again, depending on your financial means, sign up for the 4-H, the PTA, the book club, whatever the kid loves, do. We were privileged to be able to live in Florida, and we did dolphin therapy. The research clearly, I know as a researcher, doesn't give strong evidence this works. We didn't care. Josh, what did you love about dolphin therapy?
Well, dolphins are a lot like humans. They kind of give you certain signs of basically when they're annoyed or when they're frustrated, and it kind of shows you, and they help you give techniques on how to kind of go further with those things, and kind of like helping the parent interaction with me, kind of like telling my parents when, it was hard, or today was a bad day, stay away, give me some space, things like that. It was a great experience as a whole. And I would definitely go back if I could.
Yeah. And we liked it so much, we did it twice. We'd forego other things in life because that's what was important to us as a family. And yet you can see there's high school grades. Things were not great. Again, would he get a diploma? Would he pass the state test? All those things you're struggling with. We had those struggles. And what I will tell you is if you keep celebrating and you keep working with teachers and focusing on the positive and the strength, so many things can be negated for a 2E student when they really focus on their strengths. And those strengths were never ending for us. Florida State gymnastics champion. And do you want to talk for a moment about college? Because boy, did you not only blossom, but I really liked you when you went to college.
Well, it was a successful career once again, getting into college. I probably wouldn't have gone to where I am if it wasn't for having my strength of gymnastics, pushing that forward. It did get me into having a lot of success in the academic side of things. And as in this picture here, that's me winning ECACs, which is our conference championships. I got second in all around. So that was a huge highlight in my senior year as well. So kind of just ending in a bang. It was awesome. And I as well got academic All-American all 4 years. And that's just, icing on the cake for all of it. Looking back at those report cards beforehand and, seeing all D's and C's and B's and things like that, where, it was a completely different story when I got to college.
Yeah. And I will tell you that even in college, we didn't need a lot of help. We used a lot of technology. Of course, I did a little bit of tutoring. We only hired a tutor in one area, which was really hard for him, which was biology, vocabulary words and his dyslexia. Josh can tell you every feature of your body, but he probably can't remember your name. And so a lot of those recalls of specific facts were hard for him. So we hired a tutor. Other than that, he did college on his own with the support of his peers and his colleagues. And then I think one of your highlights of college is the next image, right, Josh?
Yeah. I don't know if anyone's heard of Team Impact, but basically it's kind of just giving the opportunity to anyone that may not be able to either go to college or be on a sports team in college. This was Zach here. He was a part of our team. He signed contract. He had T-shirts. He came to all the events with us. He sometimes, if was able to, walk out onto the floor with us when we all walked in as a team. He was literally a teammate for us. And it was an awesome experience to have him in the gym. And a couple other teams had a couple other people as well.
And, I love that Josh Snapchatted me and my man, Zach, getting a trophy on the rings at the West Point Open. And I always say Zach and Josh and any kid with a disability that is on a team, in a group, working in a classroom, they're not there for them. They're there so everybody else accepts the beautiful diversity of our culture. I've had the privilege of graduating 27 Ph.D. students with disabilities, blind, deaf, ADHD, learning disabilities, and they teach teach me more than I ever teach them. And so what I love is Josh's team really saw Zach as the inspiration for them to do better instead of, oh, isn't it nice to have this kid? I also want to keep pushing. Kids who are 2E need the chance to give back to others in areas of strength. So again, that was another reason that we celebrate. And then on Mother's Day, I will say this without crying, but it is hard for me. It was the biggest day I cried the most, and he's smiling. Josh got a college degree. Honestly, in second grade, if you would have predicted that, if you'd had a crystal ball and you said, my crystal ball says he will get a college degree, I'd been like, you're crazy. It's not happening. And I'm a professor in special education. I should have known better, but I just knew how hard it was every day to live with Josh. Loved him unconditionally, but my husband and I both were like, what can we do better with this kid to help him more? And this is the image I want you to keep in mind of Josh today, is standing, getting a college degree by himself. Because when students get to college, they get a very special IEP. It has 0 minutes. There is no IEP in college, and Josh really did college on his own. We gave him a lot of support prior to. I might have read a few textbooks with you, right, Josh?
Yeah, most
Yeah,
definitely.
I can tell you, I got a little bit of a rec management degree, but I couldn't go to class for him. I couldn't do his presentations. And so again, that's the image we hope you'll be thinking about for your own child today, whatever it might be. Josh originally thought it would be a career. College ended up being an option. You want to share with them what you're doing today?
Yeah. So, I just had a new job, but prior I was a manager at Summit Ropes Indoor Venture, which is a indoor ropes course / team building facility. We had, a little bit of everything, and I was kind of part of the management team there. And now I am currently a sales floor manager at or with Trek Bicycle Corporation in Leesburg, Virginia. I am in charge of the sales floor there, and it's been great because I bike all the time. So I'm kind of ingrained myself in a strength of mine, which is physical activity, and I get to be around it all the time now.
Yeah, I love that he finished gymnastics and now he does enduro mountain bike racing. So again, when your child, young adult, has a gift, that gift needs to be nurtured throughout their life, not just in their job and their career. Josh also has really good public speaking skills, and he's really kind of honed in on that and is great as a sales manager for that reason. So again, as a mother, I get a chance to brag. But again, there's so many areas that are hard for him. It's been nice he's found areas that compensate. So we have a little quote for you we really like. It says, every superhero has a unique superpower that gives him an advantage. In other words, it's okay to diversify your skills, but do not hesitate to fully capitalize on your strengths. And I think that's what you will see with Josh's degree, his skills in technology. Like, he has chosen things that were good for him in jobs, in careers, in pathways, but he had to put up with school to get there. Would that be a fair statement, Josh?
Most definitely.
So that's the first part, kind of thinking of strengths and challenges. Now we're just going to highlight some life readiness. So one of the things that we believe is that kids with disabilities should be able to talk about their disability just like they would race, class, gender, culture, any other aspect of life, and to talk about their strengths as well as their challenges. So we were really a little struggling when we moved to Florida. Florida has a mandatory retention policy, which I could have fought with a lawyer and all of that. But Josh came home in third grade and said, I'm going to do third grade twice. And we're like, what? And he's like, no, I'm going to do it twice. And I may embarrass you here, Josh, but he's like, I really want to have the pretty teacher next door next year. And I was like, okay, whatever works. And so when he repeated third grade, we really got lucky. Wouldn't you agree that not only did he have a great teacher 2 years in a row, he wanted to do third grade twice, which the research, I was worried as a parent. If you're listening today, I was like, okay, he's going to repeat a grade. So he's got a 200% chance of dropping out of high school. And he's got Tourette's. So he's got a 300% chance. He's got a learning disability. And I just started saying no, but he kept saying, but this is what I want to do. And I think that's another gift Josh has, is knowing what he needs and having a voice to share that. So if you can nurture that, that's great. So in third grade, he repeated third grade. His teacher had every kid write a social story about something they were good at. You can imagine Josh was physical. And then she had every kid write a book about a struggle. And he happened to have in third grade another peer who had Tourette syndrome. You want to share what the book is that the two of you wrote, Josh?
Yeah. The book that we made is it's called Tourette's. So what's your problem? Or we have Tourette's. So what's your problem? And me and this other kid, we came together and we were kind of like, all right, there's a battle between tics and daily life, and you kind of just embrace it. So it was kind of just taking a hold of, and what we've been talking about the whole time is just a strength and using that and really helping it guide you forward. And that's kind of basically what the gist of the book is about, and kind of just accepting that you have it and to move forward with it.
And this teacher, if you're an educator on the webinar today, this teacher gave us a great gift. She made it so natural for these two boys to talk about Tourette's that it just became easy in our community and our culture. And so again, great celebration. So we're going to share with you just some advice. And these are things for me, and then Josh will follow up with some advice from him. But, again, if you can just talk about those differences, both the strengths. So, we always be like, Josh, did you tell people that you've done well in gymnastics and you have a trophy? Well, no, my friends don't know that. They only know I can't write. We're like, okay, we need to talk about that. And so we did a lot of coaching of him, talking about, or did you tell the teacher that it's really hard for you to write and that you have dysgraphia? And he's like, yeah, I haven't told that teacher that. Okay, well, what are we going to do about that? Do you want me to do it? So we had a lot of that. We taught him how to do that by modeling, coaching. And it was very funny. He'd have some friends, he's like, yeah, they don't deserve to know I have Tourette's because they're not nice. I'm like, okay. So again, it was really his choice. And then the other thing, I still laugh. You'll remember this. Dad standing in line with you for like 5 hours to meet Twitch, the motocross biker, because there weren't a lot of people with Tourette's at the time. And he took him in the back of his trailer when he found out Josh had Tourette's and spent a couple hours saying, here's what you do to survive middle school. So the one thing, if I could live my life over, I probably would have looked for more 2E kids like Josh early on. He knew a lot of gymnasts. He knew a few people with Tourette's and learning disability, but I didn't fill those buckets equally. And so that's something I really encourage you to do, is meet successful people that have the same strengths, but also those that have the challenges.
Yeah. So a couple of things that I have, for advice on my side of things is you reiterated kind of just, letting me choose when I want to tell certain teachers or people. One of the things I did a lot in college was I really wanted them to meet me as Josh Dieker and not as Josh Dieker with Tourette's. So what I did was I would always go to the first class, and I just would not tell them anything, because the first class generally wasn't a lot of, like studying or anything, tests or anything like that. So just go into class, and then I would introduce myself in the class, walk out, and then either I would tell them in person or I would send them an email and say, hey, just to let you know, I have Tourette's, and kind of just let them see me as me and not to worry the first day, oh, I have a kid now that's going to make a distraction in the class. And that kind of just reiterates itself, just, advocating for yourself. And then also finding some friends. On one of the next slides here, I actually embraced myself with a full room. It was a very interesting experience with kids with Tourette's, different severity levels for sure. And I got to, hang out with a ton of people with Tourette's and people that were just like me, sharing experiences and having, those types of interactions with people. And I was able to actually, meet a ton of great friends that I can now outreach to, and vice versa, about any questions I have or any struggles that I've been having. And, I get, texts from them every once in a while saying, hey, I had this experience. Have you had anything similar? And we love to kind of bounce each other's ideas off each other.
And so one of the things that we know beyond just advocacy and knowing your strengths and challenges is, honestly, we both believe technology levels the playing field. And having had Ph.D. students who are blind and deaf and learning disabilities, honestly, they survive ADHD with having tech tools like a watch that vibrates to remind them to be somewhere or to keep them on task. I have one student who lives and dies by the Pomodoro method of the tomato timer to say, all right, if you see that on, don't bother me because I'm trying to sustain my attention for 15 minutes. So we're really big in technology. And these are some that we think you are kind of must know. If you haven't really ever taken your cell phone and looked at all the accessibility features on your phone, it's one we highly recommend. There's so many built-in features, text to speech, speech to text. If you have a child who doesn't really get the comprehension, I've been listening to lots of shows now with audio descriptions, and it gives you the background, like man in elevator coming off grumpy. Well, that really helps for kids who don't get the nuances of social emotional cues. Josh, you had almost every textbook. Well, you did have every textbook you needed in digital format, and you're pretty savvy with Bookshare.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And so he's able to download those. Bookshare.org is for kids with print disabilities, especially kids who have print disabilities that have visual tracking issues or visual issues. And now the books are free. Every book Josh needed in college was there but one book. And when we asked, it got scanned in. Last count I saw on Bookshare, about 1 million books. The audio text features, Josh would always play with the background. I'd laugh one day. I was like, what are you doing? He's like, I'm reading the book in pink font with a fuchsia background. I'm like, you are colorblind. You realize that? He's like, yep. And then sometimes he'd be listening to really fast, sometimes really slow. So again, and then I have several free resources that you're welcome to go out and look, including a podcast that we've been doing called Practical Access. And then on top of it, I have several websites that I've bookmarked, about 800 across content, if you're looking for some more technology resources. And then the last thing we both believe is that kids can't wait until high school and college to get good at Google and the word suite. That's something they should be doing as early as possible in life. What's your advice, Josh?
Yeah, kind of just bouncing off that idea right there of, Google and just different word presentations. A lot of these, different platforms kind of actually jump off of each other's ideas. So, like the Adobe suites, all the different programs that they have in there, they all use very similar tools. So just knowing the basics behind, just how to click a button and how to type a couple of things. And how to download certain things, and job searches. It's very crucial nowadays. Everything's online. Everything's about typing up emails, and kind of just knowing your sources and how to use them properly in different ways.
So again, you see, we both like technology. We don't think it's a solution, but we think it's definitely one way to continue to have a strength. So if you really need to minimize a disability, especially dyslexia and dysgraphia, there's a lot of technological tools. I laughed, Josh, on his, I think it was your 14th birthday on Facebook when we finally let him have one. It said, my favorite thing this year is Siri. And he'd spelled it S-E-R-E. And I didn't even correct it, but I had the best laugh. Because again, that was a great gift. He didn't have these tools when he was really young, but as they evolved, we were quick to adopt new tools that really changed the playing field for him. What is the one that you use now? Grammarly.
Yeah. Grammarly. Yeah. That one, I like that one a lot.
And why?
It helps punctuations on all the small little things that you kind of look over, and it also helps change. It tells you what's emotions. So it can kind of tell you different emotion, whether it's a very aggressive, text, and it works across all platforms. So whenever you text on your phone, it pops up, or text or type in an email on your computer, it fixes it anywhere. Even if you were to leave a review on Google or something, it'll still correct that stuff.
And I will tell you, before Grammarly, Josh started using it, I would have to read his emails all the time. He'd call me and he'd say, Mom, can you read this before I send it to a job site? I laugh. I was like, dude, he's like, no, because I just kind of found a tool that most of the time I'm confident in what I can do. Whereas before, he really lacked that confidence in even being able to send an email. And that is part of getting a job in this day and age. So then we wanted to talk a little bit about student voice and how do you get a voice? What do you do with your voice? And one of the things I want to make sure parents and educators are aware of and remind you of is there's a big difference in an IEP and getting access in college. Remember, college is a privilege. K through 12 education and the Individuals with Disabilities in Education Act mandate that kids get services. College, under the Americans with Disabilities Act, has to give equal services so that kids have access, but it isn't an aide, a support person. There could be a note taker. There are supports, but they vary by college, they vary by place, and they only happen if your kid knows how to advocate. Nobody shows up to help your kid if your young adult doesn't know how to do that. So one of the things that we've really been big on is kind of thinking when we weren't sure if he would make it to college, if we were even going to get a high school diploma, because those were some dark days in our house too, as we struggled with those issues, is, what degrees are out there that don't require a college degree? Do you remember the job you were pretty sure you're going to do if you didn't do gymnastics and go to college?
Oh yeah, I was going to be an elevator repairman, which wasn't a lot of studying involved there.
Yeah. Well, he was worried a little bit, but math was a strength. So again, going back to the strength, it required a lot of mathematical skills, but it paid a lot of money. And he's like, and it's flexible, and I don't have to say I've sustained attention, and I get to interact with people. So you might take a look at the career outlook book of what's coming in the future. And I recommend doing that like at third grade, fourth grade, fifth grade. We were constantly saying, where are you going next? What do you want to do? And that changed. I don't think you ever wanted to be a firefighter, but something along that line when you were young. And as it evolves, you want to start laying the pathway to how to get there. One of the crazy things I did is I called the disability office and I said, hi, you haven't met me yet. And she said, she was a great disabilities office person at Springfield College. She said, no, and I won't meet you. I will meet your young adult. I was like, she's right. She's right. And I said, but could you tell us what majors do kids who really struggle with reading and writing do best? And she said, yeah, usually criminal justice and recreation management. And it was a great major. Josh, why do you think you did so well in recreation management?
Well, it definitely labeled out all of my strengths. Definitely very minimal tests other than, the core classes that I had to take in college. But most of it was, project-based. Creating companies and like presenting and really kind of going in depth with that stuff. It wasn't all about, learning all the different veins in your body and having to have a quiz and know each name, because that would definitely not have been my strength.
And then I always remind people when they say, my student's really bright, but I'm not sure they'll show up and do well their freshman year. They maybe won't go to class well. I'm like, just get a 4-year degree. Most of the people I know that are really brilliant in the 2E world specialize at the master's or doctoral level. A lot of them survive the first 4 years. Josh did really well in college. It might be because his team captain would have been all over him if he didn't. I also put him in the same major as his coach. So he had a little pressure to do well. But at the same time, if you don't have that as an option, remember getting that 4-year degree gives you the pathway to go on for your child who might have really exceptional skills. Sometimes those first 2 years of college can be hard. I've seen that for lots, especially boys coming to college. They struggle those first 2 years in some ways. And then often junior, senior year, they figure it out. And then the master's and the doctorate are a breeze because it's in their specialty area. Josh, what's your advice for college?
Yeah, definitely kind of being a part of a group, and, speaking in some of the meetings that you guys have, part of being in the discussion itself. Those meetings don't have to be class. I sometimes was, depending on the class, very quiet and just more or less just wanted to understand the material. But I did speak up when it came to, meetings with, gymnastics or with groups or any kind of things that were happening on campus. And just understanding where those strengths are. Like for me, it was presenting, and it really shined in college because I was really able to kind of bear down on those strengths and really hone in on what I wanted to learn. Now, yes, there's those weaknesses, but I always kind of over-trumped them with my strengths. The weakness of writing and typing, that still was something I had to do in college. But, using, the programs that are out there, like knowing the technology and just understanding how to get those texts out there without having to potentially write them out or having, someone else help me with those types of things. So attacking those weaknesses, definitely.
Yeah, and most universities have a disability service center that you can go to. Josh's university even had a 1-credit writing class. And when we saw that, we're like, oh, we know that's hard for him. And it was 3 students and 1 professor. And he just got to take his papers and get support there. So again, ask around, here's what it's hard for me, whether you have a disability or not. What are those resources? How do I use them? How do I access? And how much lead time do I need? A lot of times, young adults with disabilities struggle in college because they do things at the last minute. Oh, shocking. Okay. Not unusual, you can do that in an area of strength, but in an area of weakness, maybe that needs to be the thing that gets planned first. And often he would do writing first so that he could go get support and help across campus. And then the last part, we wanted to talk a little bit about parent voice and supporting those teachers that work with you as parents, or if you're a teacher working with parents. So I got some really good advice early on. And I was like, all right, be a parent, not a tutor. And I was like, but I know how to tutor, Josh. And they're like, yeah, but you're going to blur that line. And I helped him some academically, but we got a life coach. And I almost always either send him to after school tutoring. If you don't have resources, perhaps there's a free tutor at the YMCA, maybe through your church. Phone a friend, an aunt, an uncle, somebody that says, all right, even if I need to help you 3 days a week, on Tuesday, Thursday, could somebody else give me a break? Because again, the two of us struggled with liking each other when it came to school. We would go to gymnastics and be excited, but boy, when we went to do spelling or writing or reading, there were some ugly moments in our house. Would you agree, Josh?
Most definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then I was taught very early on by my own parents. My own brother was institutionalized with no hope of a future. They wanted to do a lobotomy. He got the flu and got better. And they hoped my brother would be able to someday tie his shoes. My brother just left the job as the CFO of the city of Washington, D.C. So I was taught very early on, kids need to advocate and they need to be celebrated, but don't tolerate bad habits. And so we were really big on, yeah, that's really hard for you, but we're not tolerating you not doing it. And there were some really not nice moments. And yet at the same time, we think the outcome is good. We talked about the future all the time, but we paired the future with consequences. And that's where the life coach was amazing. You know, my favorite statement, I think your life coach, Mark, ever said to you was, stop making stupid decisions. And Josh's like, what do you mean? And he's like, well, you don't want to be bothered by your mother in the morning, then get out of bed. If you don't want the teachers to bother you, do what you're supposed to do. And so really having those other people in our life made a difference. And I love to talk. I present all the time. I teach all the time. Josh will tell you I'm a talker. But when he starts talking, I almost always stop and I listen. He's been so good to tell me what his needs are because I've listened to them. I think he's been his best advocate. I didn't teach him that. It just is another area of strength. And I'm really proud of you, Josh.
Yeah. And then a couple of things, you know, from my perspective is just having that open relationship, you know, even if, you know, it's with a friend as well, just having a communication and an outsource. For me, it was you for, you know, my whole life. It still is. And then, you know, I also had, you know, the relationship with a lot of other kids that had Tourette's kind of later, a little bit later, and with the Tourette's Association. And that was an awesome experience where I could open up and have those conversations with them as well. Now, I didn't talk a lot about my disability when I was younger as much. But, you know, after having a ton of other friends that had it later on in life, I just, at this point, I'm more than happy to go tell anybody at any point in time, you know, and just being supportive, you know, just not, you know, with yourself and all along with, you know, those that support you, just really embrace that because there is most likely somebody that's always willing to support you. And that's where a really good friend comes in. And one last thing is that when we were talking about the dolphin therapy, dolphins, how I said that they kind of understand humans very well. If they start flapping their tail, that means they kind of are either aggravated or mad or something. Normally that's kind of saying, hey, get away from me. And we use that in the house a lot, where I had a dolphin necklace with a tail on it. And if I flapped that when I came home from school or something like that, kind of just told my parents, hey, just take a step back. You know, maybe this isn't, you know, the time for a conversation right now. And we kind of left each other space.
Yeah, I remember he wore that when he was young, and about 14, one day he just came and put it on and went and started flapping it. And so again, whatever, you're going to have bad days. What's your strategy? Is it walk away? We joke that I give in and my husband yells louder. I mean, you know, whatever works for you as a parent, but it's really important that it always ends with a celebration of something good. So we hardly ever went to bed mad, but we did have a lot of friends that were like, could you take Josh on a walk around the block? Could he come ride a bike with your son for a little bit? I need a break and he needs a break. So think about what your strategy is going to be when you're having a bad day, because there are bad days. Josh one day smeared a Sloppy Joe all over the wall because he didn't like the texture of it. And I was like, but that's your favorite sandwich. And I was like, all right, I have to walk away because I'm so angry. He did later clean the wall up. But again, his being angry, my turning around and being angrier didn't really ever get us anywhere. And so I would try to walk away when I could. But again, I was human and there were moments that were struggles. So my advice to parents too, in working with teachers, I always tried to remember Josh was one of 20 kids. He wasn't the only kid the teacher was worried about. There were 20 kids they were worried about. And then when Josh got to high school, so hard for me. But I had to remember he was one of 120 kids walking through that language arts class. And how do I, ask them to do something special for him? That's where I really got big on Josh trying to do it for himself. Like, look, that teacher can only do so much. How can we help you? What tools do we need to put in place? And remember, teachers like to hear nice things too. Being a classroom teacher myself in middle school, man, it's tough. And so, I would jokingly say, I'll buy you the best holiday gifts. And they're like, yeah, and your son still, we love him, but boy, is he hard. And I'm like, I know. I always started every meeting with a picture of Josh. And then I would say his name. I jokingly say, you can say his middle name if you're having a bad day with him, Joshua Paul Dieker. And then I would say, and he happens to have Tourette's dysgraphia and dyslexia, but let me explain. On a 1 to 10, his Tourette's are a 4. His dysgraphia is about an 11, and his dyslexia is about a 5. So if we have these things in place, so I was really specific, like he needs these things. He cannot remember his multiplication facts. Still can't today, but he's brilliant in math. So please don't put him in a lower math class just because you test him on math. So again, be very specific about what he can and cannot do. I volunteered any time, and I didn't have time, as Josh will tell you, but I volunteered anywhere I could to make sure that people saw the strength of Josh, because that was a great way as a volunteer to say, oh, by the way, did you know this about Josh? Instead of, oh, let me be here only to complain. And then I would always assume the best from teachers. But when things got bad, and we had some pretty bad situations we won't talk about on a webinar, I would always open with, I wonder what would happen if we tried this, because I didn't want to judge teachers, but it was really important that when Josh's voice didn't work, I was ready to step in, but not to attack, but to try to build a neutral field for everybody. Didn't always work. We only attacked once, I think, in his whole career. But most of the time it worked with just great discussions. So Josh, you have kind of a closing thought for us here, I think. Oh, well, mine's first, right? Yeah. So yeah. I wanted to, sorry, I messed that one up. Hard to believe, though. I want to remind you as a parent, you will make mistakes, but so will other people in your life. I got that very early on. I was taking Josh to the first daycare he was in, and my friend who's in early childhood said, don't expect them to be a better parent than you are. I was like, wow. But I also will tell you from being, having a sibling with a disability, having a brother-in-law and a sister-in-law that have intellectual disabilities. The other thing is always trust your parent gut. Your parent gut tells you something good and bad. Trust it, listen to it, and talk to others, because parents need people just like people with disabilities need others. And yours, Josh.
Yeah. And letting us go is definitely hard. The thing you don't want to do is just don't let us go too far.
And for some reason, that part didn't show up. But anyway, we thank you for that privilege. And thank you, Josh, for the chance to present with you.
Well, thank you both for sharing such a personal and encouraging story. We have so many comments. We have lots of moms who thank you, Lisa, for sharing your personal and encouraging story. And Josh, we have a few people who say their sons are gymnasts and they are big fans of yours. Yeah. So before we start the Q&A, I'd like to thank Brain Balance once more for sponsoring this webinar. And I'll just get right to the questions. So someone asks, when a child presents with poor grades, when do you suspect giftedness? Is it based on IQ testing, or how do you evaluate for this?
So one of the things we did really early on is again, having the privilege of being in schools, school psychologists do a good job of testing, but I knew it wouldn't be to the level I needed. So again, we made some financial decisions early on. We were definitely not well-to-do when Josh was born. And we made some decisions to forego a vacation to get him a very extensive battery of testing. And that was in second grade because we knew something wasn't right. And that was expensive. But I can tell you still today, that testing is some of the best data I have ever seen on who Josh is, because it clearly showed. And when we were done, this very great psychologist said, look, you have a very long future in front of you. I was like, well, that's depressing. And he said, the reason is because that child has in the same subtest some of the most gifted traits I've ever seen and some of the most delayed traits I've ever seen. And he said, so he's always going to score average. And that's what you want to be looking for is, maybe your child is scoring average, but are there peaks and valleys within that average that says you're really gifted here and there? For Josh, a lot of his giftedness was outside of school. But if you looked at his IQ testing, for example, in shapes and patterns, he can't copy them to save his life, but he can do a maze in 2 seconds. So there were so many peaks and valleys there that we were quickly realizing that there are some strengths and weaknesses. For him, it delayed him getting any services until third grade because he didn't qualify, which is a very common trait for kids who are 2E. Because they are so bright in certain areas, they're compensating without even realizing it.
Yeah, we have quite a few questions about, what are some of the challenges helping kids, elementary and middle school teachers understand the difference between 2E versus gifted. Can you address that?
Yeah, Josh, do you have anything you want to say? Like, how do you think teachers best understood you, or do you want me to take it? I'll let you decide.
I kind of like what I mentioned in the presentation a little bit was the, really focusing on, I wanted them to see who I was first, so that they understood that I was still, someone that was like fun. I always had a smile, and sometimes I would just, kind of tell them, hey, I'm part of the gymnastics team at the time. Or, I have some extracurricular activities I do. But I never, and sometimes I would even tell them, hey, not a good speller, just a heads up on that, or kind of give them that little bit of a rundown and that sort of things.
And then when I work with teachers, what I typically suggest is that every lesson should be planned for a bookend, the kid who struggles and the kid who's gifted. And the kid with a disability might be the kid who struggles in language arts and is above everybody else in mathematics, or vice versa. And so what I often would do is say, look, here are the things Josh is really good at. And here are the things that honestly, at this point in time, I'm fairly confident it won't matter how hard he works, he's not going to be able to do it. Like we did multiplication facts. We drove an hour each day to the gym back and forth. We did those for 2 years. If I had my life to live over again, I wouldn't have wasted 30 seconds because Josh always understood that 6 times 6 was 6 groups of six things. His conceptual understanding of mathematics was off the chart. His memory of states, capitals, spelling, 6 times 6 was never good. And so what I would say is make a list. That's what I do. Like here's a table of Josh's strengths. Here's the areas that are hard for him. And so, but I didn't do that first. I didn't do it the first day of school. I let them meet him, gave them a picture, had him show them a medal or something he did well, and then I gave them that information. So that's my suggestion to you, is helping them understand the bookends, because gifted is gifted, but a disability is a disability. When you have a kid who has both, they need to understand that duality.
Okay. A few parents have said that their 2E students have had problems finding friends they can relate to. Do you have suggestions for how to help them find friends?
There's a couple different places. I mean, social media is a huge platform nowadays, and it doesn't even have to be a friend-based or like in person. For all you could just be following a group on social media. That's something that you do all the time. Shoot them a message, start a conversation. and using technology to its fullest for that sort of thing. But kind of like how I got into certain friend groups of like basically with the Tourette's Association, as I kind of applied for it and kind of ingrained myself in that culture for a little bit. And then I kind of developed a lot of friends. And, there are nice people out there that are more than willing to, reach out and chat about certain things. So I think just outsourcing and being able to kind of find your niche and kind of like who you like and kind of certain things like that. Like the biking community for me, ever since I started racing, the first year I kind of went to a race, didn't know anybody. I now go to the race. Even the next year of racing, I knew at least 10 or 15 people. And now I know almost everybody when I go to one of these races.
And one quick tip I share is if you want to reach out to a teacher, hey, do you have a graduate in the school district that you can think of that is gifted in art and really struggles as a writer? Because I would like my child to meet somebody that is like them. And oftentimes teachers are like, oh yeah, so-and-so is in college now. And if that doesn't work, go to the college center in your nearest by college, community college, and say, are there any kids like this that maybe I could connect my young adult with? And often they'll send out a blast. And it's shocking how many of my PhD students, like my student who's blind, she's like, oh yeah, I'd be happy to talk to another Braille user and what's been the benefits of going to college using Braille. So that's the kind of partnerships we would recommend you try. Those are some good places to start.
Josh, this question is for you. Can you tell us more about your feelings growing up? What were your frustrations and what did you wish your parents would have known?
Yeah. Well, I think as a, very, very young kid, half the time I didn't even know what my frustrations were. A lot of them were sensory. A lot of them were like, certain shirts. My mom would set out a shirt and stuff like that. And I didn't even know I didn't like it until I got to school. So there were certain things where I just didn't know until it actually happened. But, dolphin therapy, for instance, having those types of things where we were able to, flap the tail back and forth with the necklace, and just kind of, I started to learn about myself the most, I guess is the best way to put it. Just kind of being self-aware of what was happening around me to find when those frustrations were happening. And then having that open communication with my parents of kind of just letting them know, hey, 5 minutes, or we'll talk about this later, or let's chat in an hour, and kind of just, this is my plan. I know what's going to happen. So let's just come back to it.
And in middle school, you had a teacher. Do you want to talk about like that you could go to her room all the time?
Well, yeah. So, there was, yes. And that's a good one as well as, I had a teacher in middle school where I knew if, it was a bad day, or sometimes I was actually walked out of the class a couple times by her to just go walk around and say, hey, you having a bad day? And I'm like, no, but she happened to know. So sometimes I'm not even aware of it. And, we're humans, so we all make mistakes. We're not completely aware of everything we do at the time, but, the good thing was I was able to go to her room and kind of had that outlet of a source to kind of like, get a little reset. And sometimes that's what I needed.
I have a few questions around how your grades changed from high school to college. What changed in college that allowed you to be able to perform academically?
Yeah. Well, the big one was being able to kind of narrow down and very capitalize on my strengths. That was a huge, huge one for me. Kind of went into college of like the, unknown. I just was like, oh, I'm going to do gymnastics at college. That's what I've always wanted to do. Didn't even look at school originally. Then I started going to class. I'm like, okay, I only have to go for 1 hour. And I guess I can bear down and sit for 1 hour. And then the material started to get interesting. And then I was like, okay, I could do this for like an hour, hour and a half, but I only had to go 3 times, a week. I wasn't, said, all right, wake up again, go to school for 8 hours, come home, and then wake up again, come home. And like, it was more or less like I had a little bit more of a structure, and I got to create that structure. I got to pick when my classes were, and I got to, kind of develop those breaks where I had them and where I wanted them. For instance, as I started to get really good at creating my schedule towards I think it was like probably, sophomore, junior year, I started doing it where I had 1, maybe 2 days out of the week where I didn't even have class. I just packed it all in, Monday, Wednesday, Friday, or had a really packed Monday, Tuesday, and then I'd have off Wednesday. So I really developed that structure, and it was very, very personalized to where I could capitalize very, very, strongly on my strengths, which were, knowing how to, develop those materials and making, it easier for me. But yeah, I also got to learn something I wanted to learn. I wasn't forced to learn certain things.
Josh, here's another one for you. What did you do to build your public speaking skills? And also the comment is, I love that he's followed his strengths and interests in his career.
Well, I would say some of it is my mother. She loves to talk, so I'm sure I got some of those traits from her. And I think it's just, my big thing is I don't like to hide behind, a wall or something. I'm normally like, sure, I'll just do it. So I think just, embracing who you are as a person really developed me to be, a little bit of a public speaker. And, it's not for everybody. But I think the biggest thing is just embracing who you are as a person and just accepting that, we're all human. Everyone can speak in front of a crowd. We're just having a conversation here, basically. So that's kind of how I've looked at, public speaking and kind of grown stronger at it.
Well, unfortunately, we're out of time. So Lisa and Josh, thank you both so much for joining us today and for sharing your personal journey and your expertise with our ADHD community. And make sure you don't miss future Attitude webinars, articles, or research updates by signing up to receive our free email newsletters at attitudemag.com/newsletters. If you're listening in replay or podcast mode, visit attitudemag.com and search podcast 423 to access the slides, the webinar replay, and the certificate of attendance option. If you support the work we're doing here at Attitude to strengthen the ADHD community, we encourage you to visit attitudemag.com/subscribe and sign up for Attitude Magazine. The latest fall issue features our Success at School special section. We highlight advice from experts to help your child thrive in this school year. The fall issue also includes articles with expert guidance on what to do when schools resist LD evaluations and support, and how to conquer social anxiety, how to bully-proof your kids, and so much more. In the upcoming winter issue, teachers will appreciate our pullout, 5 ways to improve classroom behavior. Sign up for Attitude Magazine for your family or to share with a teacher or a loved one who could benefit from greater ADHD understanding. Thank you.
For more Attitude podcasts and information on living well with attention deficit, visit attitudemag.com. That's ADDITUDEMAG.com.